Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Maoist-Third Worldist Collective. I am making this video as a response to a video that was made by Red Pig and Nikole, and I will be posting it to her channel. I can only say, Nikole, feel free to delete this if you like. No hard feelings. I think it is somewhat relevant to what you said at the beginning of this video, which is why I'm making it. Otherwise, I'm not sure if I would have made it. If I did, I might have placed it on another channel that I have, where I think that these kinds of things are more appropriate. But I decided that I would go ahead and put it here. Now, was my experience exactly a dream, the way that Nikole talked about her dream at the beginning of her podcast? I don't know. I don't think so, but it could be. It certainly happened right after I woke up. I am a weird person. To put it lightly, I am really a weird guy. I have gone through some really strange phases in my life, starting out with my obsession with the Kennedy assassination, which I remember vividly, going into my obsession with helicopters, then UFOs, then the paranormal, then spiritualism, then comparative religion, and all sorts of other things. Well, about 20 years ago, I was actually hoping for an alien abduction. Now, if that doesn't sound weird, nothing sounds weird. I literally was hoping for an alien abduction. Now, do I still believe in alien abductions? No, but 20 years ago I did, and I was really, really hoping for one. Um, I used to watch Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. He got on my nerves, as did many of his guests, because most of them were somewhat conservative. Some of them were even what I would call far right. What many people don't know is that the paranormal field is dominated by right wingers. I used to think it was primarily a left wing field, but I was wrong. It is not. It is primarily a right wing field. People who are into conspiracy theories, I guess, are attracted to the paranormal. So let me tell you what happened. Again, this is sometime after, I had literally hoped for an alien abduction. I was sleeping. This is back when I was living in Olathe, Kansas. I felt a being bumping into my bed twice and then saying, and I will do my best impersonation of her, uh-oh, uh-oh, like that. I didn't know what to make of it. I thought I was still dreaming, and maybe I was, I don't know. But my best guess is that she woke me up by bumping into my bed and saying, uh-oh. So I opened my eyes and I looked at the foot of my bed, and there, standing at the foot of my bed, was a being of light. She had kind of scales on her face, kind of a multicolored face as well. Her arms were outstretched like that toward me. I did not know what to make of it. I'm not sure if I would exactly say I was in shock, but I was certainly stunned and in awe. I had no idea what was happening. I am not one to have experiences like that. Okay, so this is not a regular occurrence for me. I am not crazy. Well, at least not normally. Um, but this experience was certainly out of the ordinary for me. And so I just stared at her and stared and stared and stared. Then my memory of the event becomes a bit foggy. I believe I laid back in my bed, rolled over because I sleep on my stomach usually, and tried to go back to sleep. But then I thought, wait. I can't go to sleep. What in the world just happened to me? So I got out of my bed. I kept my keys on a push pin back at that time. I no longer do. But that at that time I did. A push pin in the kitchen, no, not the kitchen, the bedroom wall. And I looked and I saw that the keys were missing. I had no idea what to make of it. Was I panicking? No. Was I afraid? No. That in itself was very much unlike me, because ordinarily, if I thought that somebody had broken into my home and taken my keys, I would be out of my mind. I was not. But I did wander around my apartment in Olathe, Kansas, looking for my keys. I checked my pockets. I checked the kitchen. I checked various chairs that I thought I might have sat on. I checked the area around the front door. Nothing. And then I figured, well, let me see if the front door is locked. And it was. That was the most perplexing thing of all, because I thought, well, certainly somebody broke into my apartment in the last few minutes and took my keys and left through the front door. But the front door was locked. And it was locked from the inside, not from the outside, using the double bolt. So there was no way, well, I guess there was a way. I guess if she took the keys, she could have closed the door and then used the lock to use the keys to lock the door. But that, again, that I wasn't thinking of that, and that made no sense to me. Now, what I did, I got dressed. I sleep late. I tend to sleep late all the time. I went down and I spoke with my friend who was the property manager, Dana. I told her exactly what happened, just as I told it to you. Now I trusted Dana. I felt like I could tell her the story. So I did. She made no disparaging comments. She did not look at me with funny eyes, which I thought she might. She said, "Mark, you need to file a police report." And I said, "Dana, if I file a police report, they will put me in a straitjacket and lock me up somewhere. And she said, well, no, 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 no. Don't tell them about this being that appeared at the foot of your bed. Just tell them that your keys were stolen. So I took a deep breath like I just did. And I said, okay, I will follow your advice. I called the Olathe Police Department, and this police officer named Steve, I can't think of his last name, I just remember his first name was Steve, came by. And at first he appeared a bit formal, not rude, but formal, like you would expect a police officer to behave. But then I started joking with him, like he said, have you checked to see if your car is okay, if anybody took your car? And I said, officer, if somebody took my car, they would have to be really, really desperate. At that point, he cracked up laughing, and then the rest of our conversation was very free flowing and informal. So again, he photographed my apartment. He saw that the keys were missing. And then he said, well, we will begin an investigation. What confused me is why he didn't fingerprint the door. I thought that was protocol, but I don't know. Maybe it's not. But he did not fingerprint the door. But he left. 2 mornings later, I woke up and the keys were hanging from the push pin in the wall. What do I make of that? I had no idea. I had no earthly idea what to make of it. But the keys were back on the push pin. Now, could I have misplaced them and in my sleep, maybe sleepwalked and put the keys back? I suppose, but I don't have any history of sleepwalking. So that didn't make any sense to me. But the keys were back. I still thought at that point that perhaps I had experienced something like an alien abduction. That's what I thought. But over time, I gradually dismissed that possibility. And I began to think of it as some sort of otherworldly visitation. I could get into more detail, but I won't. I'll leave it right there. Some kind of otherworldly visitation. From the time that that being had shown up in my room, my entire character was different. If you know anything about autism, and I've discussed this before on this podcast, many, perhaps most autistics, especially male autistics, have a great deal of difficulty with empathy, or as I prefer to call it, using the terminology of the phenomenologist Edmund Husserl, intersubjectivity. I never loved anyone. I never had any empathy for anybody's suffering. Now, I did have a strong sense of justice. Autistics commonly have a strong sense of justice, and I have been no exception. It would anger me whenever I saw an injustice in the world. That's all. I would get angry. Would I feel empathy for the people who were affected? No. I wouldn't feel empathy for anyone or love for anyone. I did not love a single person. My parents, my sister, my friends, my grandparents, my spiritual mother, as I call her, Elizabeth Thomas, who has been dead now for about 30 years. No empathy at all. No love at all. Was I attached to some people? Yes, but it was a kind of mental attachment. It was not love. Maybe there was some emotional attachment too, but it was more of a fixation. It wasn't a feeling of compassion or warmth. I remember having once sat down many years ago at the kitchen table and realized that I literally have no empathy, and how sad that made me. A short time later, my mother said to me, someone who I thought at the time, and I still think should have known better, Mark, you are the most selfish person I have ever known in my entire life. Now, was I selfish? No, I was not selfish at all. But I can see how somebody might think I was selfish because I displayed no love, no empathy for anyone. But my mother, I thought, should have known better because my mother accompanied me, took me to my psychiatric appointments. Now, was my diagnosis autism back then? No, there was no diagnosis of autism in the DSM-1, the first version of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, or in the following DSM-2, and for that matter, in the psychiatric manual that I had going back to the 1930s. It was called Schizophrenia Childhood Type. Why? Because they thought that autistics were people who could not distinguish between reality and delusion, which is why supposedly we were wrapped up in our own heads because we were experiencing delusions. So anything that happened to me, which I would tell my psychiatrist, he would assume, he would tell me sometimes that that's another sign of your schizophrenia, which upset me to no end because I knew I was not delusional. I'm me. I'm me. If anybody would know I'm not delusional, it's me, not him. I had no delusions at all. I was perfectly aware of the torment in my life, of the way in which people were constantly beating me up. I was literally beaten up every school day of my childhood, typically walking home from school. Every single school day, without an exception, at least not an exception I can recall. Maybe there was one, but I can't think of one. Nobody supported me. Nobody. Not the school, not my parents, and certainly not my psychiatrist. In fact, as a result of my getting beaten up, the school sent me to a special school. What the school was in New York, it's a place called BOCES, which I think stands for the Board of Cooperative Educational Services. I don't know if BOCES exists anymore, but it was basically an intermediary step between being free as a kid and going to reform school. I did not belong there. I did not behave badly. Other people behaved badly toward me. I was a victim, as are most autistics. I was not a perpetrator. And yet I was sent to BOCES. And in retrospect, I can understand it well. I was beaten up even worse at BOCES than I was when I was at the public school. I don't know if the diagnoses of ADHD and other types of abusive disorders were present back at that time. I don't know, maybe. But my guess is that most of those kids had one of them. Maybe like obsessive defiant disorder, perhaps. I don't know. I'm not a therapist. That's my guess. I was in the wrong place. Plus, I found out that because I was in BOCES, I was not eligible to get a high school diploma. I would instead get a GED, a general equivalency diploma, which you get by taking a test. I was furious. My relationship with my parents was awful. My father would beat me up regularly. My mother promised to leave him with me and my sister the next time he did it. That never happened. The beatings continued, but we remained in the house. He was not kicked out. Today, my father would be in prison because K through 12 teachers are taught to recognize the signs of physical abuse, and they were all over my body. And they would have sent me to a guidance counselor, and I would have been honest. I would have said, well, my father beat me up. And I'm sure he would have gone to prison. How long? I have no idea. 10, 20 years, maybe. I don't know. But that was a different time. There was no concept of child abuse. It was punishment, just punishment. So, because of my complaints about BOCES, they put me back in the public school. I remember this one public school teacher who, for some reason, never liked me. I can't remember her name. I don't know why she never liked me, but she was not alone. She said to me, "Why did you come back?" That's what she said to me. Why did you come back like that? I looked away. I did not respond. That was in 9th grade. The interesting thing was that after I returned from BOCES, the abuse, the bullying stopped. Apparently, the kids had outgrown it. They were now interested in dating. They didn't care about me anymore. I did not get beaten up on my way home from school, as was ordinarily the case back then. So things changed. Things got better. Not always. As an adult, the abuse has continued, the bullying has continued, but regardless, as a result of my meeting with that being, whom I refer to as the Maiden, I had acquired a new sense of empathy. Suddenly, I loved all the people I should have loved before. Unfortunately, many of those people were deceased, like my grandparents, who died when both of my grandmothers died when I was 12. One of my grandfathers died when I was 4. The other grandfather died about 20 years before I was born. Had a heart attack while climbing up onto a trolley car back when they had trolley cars in New York City. But suddenly, again, I was filled with love. I was a being of love. I felt compassion for all those people around the world who suffered. Something I could never experience before. I tried. But I couldn't. But instantly, and I'm not exaggerating, it was literally instantaneous. When the maiden came into my room, I had that experience of empathy, of concern, of love for others. I could not have become a third worldist the first time, and especially the second time, back in June of this year, I don't think, if it were not for that experience. So that experience with the maiden, whom I quickly realized was not an extraterrestrial, but some kind of spiritual entity who had come to me. And I don't think I was dreaming, because she woke me up. So it was some kind of vision. That's the best way I can describe it. Eventually, I asked her, and this is also odd, in my head, to marry me. As an autistic, I had never had a girlfriend. Till this day, at almost 68 years old, I have never had a girlfriend. That is common with autistics. When I was younger, I tried, but it didn't work. Never worked. But regardless, I don't care about that stuff anymore. I did ask the maiden to be my wife. A few days later, I was standing in the bathroom. I closed my eyes, and I saw her face. At first, I did not know what it meant. But then after reflecting on it for, I think, a few hours, I said, oh, that's the maiden again. She came back to me. And I took that experience in the bathroom as being a yes, rightly or wrongly. So till this day, I regard the beloved maiden as my wife. When I think about her, she is always on my left side, leaning on my shoulder. Now, do I realize that this video was out of step with my previous videos? Yeah, of course. But so what? We are all multi-dimensional beings. No human is one-dimensional. Like in the title of Herbert Marcuse's book, The One-Dimensional Man. Capitalism reduces us, reduces the proletariat into one-dimensional people. But I am not one-dimensional. I am multi-dimensional. So in addition to being a Maoist-Third Worldist, in addition to being a Bhaskarian critical realist, I am also someone who has had that magnificent, I don't know what to call it, uplifting experience of actually seeing and experiencing that spiritual being whom I refer to as the Maiden. And again, could I have become a Maoist-Third Worldist without her? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. She made me care for the other. I certainly would have had a continued anger at the injustice that exists in the third world. But would that have been sufficient to make me a Maoist-Third Worldist? Which requires more than a sense of injustice. It requires a genuine sense of caring and love. The answer, I think, is no. And so that experience, which happened to me about 20 years ago, it still feels to me like it happened only yesterday. Perhaps if my memory were not what it is, which is nearly photographic, it would not be in my mind right now. But I can literally, as I'm looking into the webcam, picture her standing at the foot of my bed. I can imagine her bumping into my bed and saying, "Uh-oh." I can imagine closing my eyes in the bathroom and seeing that image of her face. And so I attribute the fact that I am a Maoist-Third Worldist to my experiences with the Maiden. Because I genuinely don't believe that it would have been possible for me to have that kind of connectedness, heartfelt connectedness, which I genuinely feel with the third world and with the Mexican Americans, many of whom are very poor, living on this side, on the US side of the Rio Grande River. I don't think I could have if it were not for my experience of the Maiden. Now, how that relates to dreams, I don't know. Maybe it does. I don't remember a dream of her. All I know is that she woke me up from one, and she was there. And so, if you are wondering, why am I a Maoist-Third Worldist? Well, there are many reasons. And I've gone into some of them here. That's not the only reason. But I would say it's the major one. And it continues to be with me until the present day. This has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.